The first time Jace Arlen saw the picture, he had to sit down on the cold deck plating and breathe. It was small, no more than a hand's width on his tool slate, but it felt like a door kicked open inside his ribs. A little girl wrapped in a silver emergency blanket, eyes glazed with ash, cheeks burned raw. No caption, no date, just a single tag pulsing at the bottom of the image, "We remember." Closed his eyes and listened to the water below the city. The alien world of Pelagos did not have calm seas. It had 1,000 restless throats. They coughed against the pylons and sang under the plasteel walkways. Ropes hummed. Wave turbines thumped like a distant heart. Above, the sky wore a bright ring that cut the daylight in two, a white band that never moved. The Lyrians said the ring kept the past in its circle. Humans said it made the horizon feel closer. Jace didn't care what anyone said. The sound of water helped him keep his head from breaking. He was a mechanic now. That was the story he told himself when he picked up a wrench in the morning and set it down at dusk. He fixed cargo skimmers and wave runners, and the bright sailboats the Lyrian children raced across the lagoons. He bartered for parts, haggled for fuel cells, and kept his hair short so the wind would not yank it into his eyes when he worked out on the open docks. It was a good life for a man who no longer wanted to aim a rifle. Pelagos was a world of coral arches and floating markets. Its cities were anchored to limestone pillars and the bones of dead leviathans. Lyrians moved like people shaped by water, long, smooth, and careful. They had gill lines along their necks that pulsed pale blue when they were excited. They greeted one another with open palms held near the heart. Their language made room for silence. Their law had a simple base that every trader, fisher, and visitor understood. No one drinks alone, and no one mourns alone. Jace liked that. He kept to the edges of their circles and pretended he didn't need either rule. He was tightening a cracked manifold on a male skimmer when Kara arrived with a shadow in her eyes and salt spray in her hair. She was Lyrian, but her skin had a deeper iron tint than most, and her gill lines glowed bright, an archivist's sign. Her people kept the memory, not just songs and stories, but the hard things, witness logs, battle maps, death lists, trade debts forgiven and not. Kara wore her memory braid across one shoulder. Tiny metal tags clinked in it. Each tag was a name and a year. "You still carry that picture," she said without greeting. "I don't carry it," Jace said. "It carries me." "Then let it carry you to the hall tonight. The tide gifts must be counted, and we need a human hand for the white knot." "I'm not a celebrator," he said. "It is not a celebration," her voice softened. "It is a tally of what we owe." Jace kept his eyes on the manifold. "I have work. You have ghosts." He looked up at her. "So do you." She didn't deny it. Her braid shifted when the wind struck it, turned it into a little bell. "The governor's drones linger on the outer pylons today," she said. "They sun themselves like fat gulls. The Empire doesn't trust a quiet lagoon." "Empires don't trust anything," Jace said. Kara's mouth tilted. "And yet you trust this place enough to stay." "I stay because I know engines," he said. "Engines don't lie to me." She put a small case on the bench beside him. It was iron, stained with salt and covered in a mesh of copper like a fisher's net. Sea rust had bitten it in places. A simple latch held it closed. No marks, no symbol. "Found by the northern kelp forest after the storm," Kara said. "A diver dragged it from a snag. It hummed in her hands like a hive." "What is it?" "We hoped you would tell us," she said. "It speaks your alphabet." Jace touched the case. It was warm. He could feel a faint vibration through the metal, like a heart beating too slow for a human chest. He lifted it, heavy. He brought it closer to his ear. The hum shifted. It recognized the heat of his skin. He smelled old oil and brine and something acrid, like the memory of burned plastic. Kara watched his face. "Do you know the mark on your own?" He turned the case over. On the bottom, a scratched line of characters. At first he thought it was a serial code, but then the shape of the letters resolved and the old training in his fingers woke. E-coil. He had built coils like this once on a ship that did not come home. Human Navy coil cases had a standard latch sequence, 2 taps, twist, slide. He pressed the latch. It did not budge. "Bring it to the archive," Kara said. "It might be a trap," he said. "It is already a promise," she answered. "You came here to escape promises, but the tide does not care about your feet." He wiped his hands, closed his tool kit, and followed her. The memory hall was a long, low building woven from driftwood and flexible steel. Nets hung from the ceiling. Lanterns shone through colored glass made from ground shell and melted sand. People spoke in low voices. The hall was never truly loud. The Lyrians had a way of making grief fit in a room without letting it drown you. At one end stood the white knot, a ceremonial rope as thick as a child's arm. Each fiber was braided from the torn and frayed lines that had failed in storms. The Lyrians knotted scraps into it every year to remember the boats lost and the lives not found. People touched the knot and told it where to hurt. Jace put the case on a table and rolled his shoulders. He felt old scars wake under his shirt, tiny fireworks of pain. He took out his tools and laid them in a simple order: cutters, probe, inductor coil. Kara moved to his side and set a kettle on a brazier. Steam rose and smelled like limes. "You will drink tea," she said. "The sea takes salt, we return sweetness, or we sour." He gave her a look, bossy. "Alive," she said. He worked. He knocked the latch pins loose with the probe, reset them with the indutor's magnetic pulse, and tried the sequence again. The latch opened with a click like a shell cracking. Inside was a cylinder of transparent plasteel and a spool of filament as fine as hair. The filament glowed faint gold. It hurt his eyes to look straight at it, because the glow did not seem to come from light. It came from pattern, as if the filament remembered being light once and had decided to pretend. "Data cord," Jace said. "Old human design, very old." He touched the cord with the tip of his cutter. It flinched back and then returned to its place like a living wire. Kara leaned close. The light wrote shadows along her braids. "What song does it carry?" "I don't know yet," he said. He reached into the case and felt a pad at the base. His fingers found a groove shaped like a human thumb. He put his thumb on it. The cord unspooled slow. Symbols flickered above the cylinder, human alphabet, then imperial glyphs, then back to human. The air seemed to buzz along his teeth. Jace swallowed. He hadn't seen this system in years. He didn't think anyone used it anymore. It was from the first years after Earth's contact, a dead standard buried by a dozen better methods. But the dead have a way of lasting where the living fail. A small projection hovered over the cylinder. A ship's hold. A woman with close-cropped hair speaking low into a camera while red warning lights pulsed behind her. "If you find this, you're either lucky or you're what I trained," the woman said. "Either way, you don't have time to be noble. The Empire lied about the Ash Child. They lied about her death. She breathes, and the key they built into her breath is burning every day." Jace's hand clenched on the table. His fingernails bit the wood. He knew that voice. Captain Mara Iyad, Combat Engineers, Europa Subfleet, the last person who told him to run and not look back, the last person he failed. Kara's braid tags rang against each other in a soft chain. "The Ash Child," she said. "The little spark that set the black ships on fire. We keep her story in the fourth vault." "Earth keeps it in all of them," Jace said. His voice felt old. "We carved her name on walls that used to hold advertisements. We cut it into spaceport rails and the backs of our teeth." "Her name was Ellie," Kara said, careful with the human syllables. Jace nodded. The word felt brittle. He had not said it out loud for a long time. He forced his eyes to the projection. Iyad kept speaking. "They built a failsafe into civilian terror operations, a biokey, a living checksum. They coded it into a child because they figured no one would look. The system draws power from the resonance of her lungs. Don't ask me for the math. The Ash net listens for that pattern. As long as the pattern runs, the net stays armed. Orbital arrays, gate locks, blackout lattice. It is all slave to a single breath." A murmur moved through the hall like a wind. Lyrians drew their palms together. A woman touched the white knot and whispered a name he couldn't hear. Jace's throat burned. "Where is she?" "The signal originates from a node called Havenglass," Iyad said. "Deep in Empire space under the tail of the Beta dorsal arm. Old ring habitat. You'll need code we stole from a defector and the map I buried in your bones, Jace Arlen. Don't pretend you don't remember. You taught me how to break closed doors." Iyad smiled in the way she did when she was about to make him do something that would get them both court-martialed. Then the projection cut out, and a tight little block of coordinates and hash keys blinked in the air like a warning. The hall was so quiet Jace could hear the kettles breathe. He realized he was shaking. He wanted to be a mechanic. He wanted the rest of his years to smell like oil and salt and hot tea. He wanted to look at broken things and fix them instead of shooting them. But the past had walked into the room and set itself on the table like a meal that could not be refused. Kara reached for the projection with slow hands, as if it might bite. "If this is true," she said, "then the Empire holds a child as a fuse." Jace nodded, and as long as she breathes to their rhythm, their old guns stay ready. "The Empire is not what it was," someone said from the benches. old Lyrian man, scars across his neck where the gills had once been cut by shackles. It is a crust now, the meat rotted. A crust still breaks teeth, Kara said. She looked at Jace. What will you do? Jace stared at the coordinates and the room got too small. The smell of limes and kelp turned into old smoke and old metal. He saw a corridor lined with heat-scored plates. He saw a chain of little lights strobe red to white. He saw a captain he could not save. His hands knew the answer before his mouth did. They moved to close the case, to lock the latch, to keep the light from being seen by anything that might listen. Because if Iyad was right, the net would ping any time the case opened. Wait, Kara whispered. Too late, a tiny tone bled out of the cylinder, too high for most ears, a needle sound. The lanterns in the hall dimmed for a heartbeat and came back. Jace tasted metal on his tongue. Kara's eyes widened. She turned her head and looked through the hall's open door at the strip of gray sky beyond. Jace looked too. Above the far pylons, 3 Oculus drones lifted off their perches and turned their black bellies toward the memory hall. Their veins unfolded. Their lenses tightened like eyes. More shapes rose behind them, thin as bone knives and bright with engine fire. Every conversation in the hall stopped. Kara's hand found the white knot and gripped. Jace stood, the case in his arms, his pulse louder than the sea. A Lyrian child near the door pointed at the sky. Mama. The first drone fired a line of orange light that cut the shadow of the hall in half. The case in Jace's hands answered with a new tone, lower now, like the growl of a waking animal. The projection snapped back to life without him touching it. Iyad's face, close and grim, filled the air. If they heard you open it, she said, they are already coming. Jace, run to the water is your shield. The net listens for heat and dry air, make the tide your road. The drone's second line of light struck the doorframe and turned the carved driftwood into a spray of sparks. Kara grabbed Jace's arm. Mechanic, she said, voice steady in a way that made him believe the sea could lift cities. You came to our world to be small. The tide does not allow it. Come. They ran. Behind them, the Oculus drones dropped from the sky like hawks toward a fish, and the hall that held the white knot began to burn. The sea was not quiet that night. When Jace and Kara burst from the hall, the wind slammed into them like a wall. Salt and smoke tangled in the air. The sound of burning driftwood roared behind them as the drones cut through the roof beams, setting the memory hall alight. Voices shouted across the pylons, Lyrian mothers pulling their children close, elders pounding the alarm gongs with rusted mallets. The gongs boomed deep, carrying across the lagoon like thunder made of bronze. Jace clutched the iron case to his chest. It felt heavier with every step. The projection had gone dark again, but he still heard Captain Iyad's voice inside his skull. Run to the water. Kara pulled him toward the docks, her braid whipping across her shoulder, tags ringing like a wind chime in a storm. Her eyes were bright with fury, not fear. Lyrians were born in water. They did not fear drowning. They feared fire. They know we opened it, Jace said, his voice ragged. They'll level the whole city just to erase it. Kara's hand tightened around his arm. Then we carry it where their fire cannot follow. The first drone screamed overhead, jet wash ripping the nets and scattering shell lanterns into the water. Its Oculus lens burned red as it scanned. A second drone banked lower, its veins glowing with charge. Jace dropped to one knee, dragging Kara down beside him. Stay low! He slammed the case against the pylon decking and flipped a panel on his wristband. A hiss answered as a crude jammer, something he'd built years ago to hide skimmer repairs from patrol scans, flickered to life. The nearest drone faltered mid-dive, its scan beam splitting into jagged lines. Kara didn't wait. She leapt from the deck into the lagoon below, slicing through the water with barely a splash. Her gill lines flared like lanterns as she turned beneath the surface and looked back at him, urging him in. Jace swore under his breath, shoved the case under his arm, and jumped. The water hit him like ice and salt and teeth. For one heartbeat, he felt like a boy again, back on Earth, falling into the black Atlantic during training exercises, lungs clamped against the cold. Then he kicked, driving himself deeper. The water muffled the sound of engines, but he still felt the tremors, booming pulses as drones strafed the pylons above. Kara swam beside him, cutting through the green depths with powerful strokes. She gestured with her hand, signaling follow. Jace followed. He wasn't graceful, but he had endurance. Years of zero-gravity drills taught him how to fight currents, how to keep moving even when every muscle screamed. They swam through the forest of kelp towers that grew tall as cathedrals beneath Pelagos' waves. Bioluminescent eels coiled in the shadows. Shellfish clung to the stalks. Schools of glassfish scattered like shards of light when the humans passed. Kara wove through the stalks like a silver ribbon. Jace lumbered behind, lungs burning. Above, muffled booms cracked the water. The drones were firing into the sea. Shafts of fire lanced downward, burning streaks into the depths. The kelp forest ignited in places, bubbles and black smoke curling upward. Jace's heart hammered. Not fast enough, they'll burn us out of the water. Kara grabbed his hand. Her gill lines flared, glowing bright blue, and she pulled him through a fissure between two giant kelp stalks. The stalks opened into a hidden cave mouth, an old limestone tunnel chewed hollow by waves. She dragged him inside just as another beam split the water where they had been. Inside the tunnel it was dark, except for the glow of Kara's gills and the faint gold shimmer from the case in Jace's arms. He pressed himself against the wall, coughing into his mask, lungs aching. Kara put a hand on his chest, forcing him still. "Breathe slow," she whispered, her voice echoing strangely in the water-soaked stone. They waited. Outside, the drones scoured the lagoon, beams crisscrossing the surface. Screams echoed faint through the water, distant, muted but real. The memory hall was gone. Jace could picture the white knot burning, its fibers turning to ash, the names of the lost curling into smoke. He wanted to stand, to fight, to do something, but Kara's steady hand kept him anchored. She knew this was survival, not cowardice. After long minutes, the beams moved away. The drone engines grew faint, then faded entirely. Silence returned, broken only by the pulse of waves against stone. Jace leaned his head back, breath ragged. The case hummed softly in his arms as if it approved. Kara studied him, her eyes catching the faint gold light. "Your empire hunts not just the living, but the dead," she said. "What did you carry into our hall, Jace Arlen?" He wanted to tell her nothing. He wanted to throw the case into the sea and let it sink until the weight of oceans crushed it flat. But the memory of Captain Iad's voice held him still. "It's not the dead they fear," he said, his voice cracked. "It's a child they should have killed but didn't." Kara's gill lines flared brighter. The ash child, not just a story. "She's real," Jace's throat tightened, "and the Empire built its power on her breath." Kara recoiled slightly as if the case itself were toxic. Then she steadied, eyes narrowing. "Then if she breathes, so does their throne, and if she stops." Jace finished the thought for her, voice a whisper. "The Empire falls." The case pulsed once, as if confirming. For a moment, neither of them moved. The sea dripped around them, and the cave smelled of salt and rust. Jace felt the weight of a choice pressing down on his chest, heavier than the water. He had run for years, trying to bury his soldier's skin. But now the past had swum across a galaxy to find him. Kara broke the silence first. "They burned our hall to stop this truth, which means the truth is worth more than the hall." She leaned close, her voice steady. "What will you do with it, mechanic?" Before Jace could answer, a faint vibration shook the stone under their feet. At first he thought it was another drone sweep, but then the tremor deepened, rolling like thunder under the seabed. Kara's eyes widened. "That is no drone," she whispered. "That is a warship breaking orbit." Jace's stomach sank. The Empire hadn't just sent drones. They had sent something larger, something hungrier. The cave's ceiling dripped salt water into the sea. The case hummed louder in Jace's hands, as if it could already feel the shadow falling toward Pelagos. And for the first time in years, Jace Arlen whispered a prayer. Not to win, not to survive, but for a child's name to be remembered if they died here. Ellie. Above them, the sea began to boil with the descent of fire. The sea boiled. Even through the limestone cave walls, Jace and Kara felt the water pulse with violent heat. The surface above had become a mirror of flame, ripples glowing red like molten iron. The vibration in the rock grew sharper, a constant gnawing hum that rattled their teeth. "Their cruiser in low orbit," Jace muttered, clutching the iron case tighter. "That's no patrol ship, that's a hammer." Kara's gill lines flared a hard white. "Then they mean to smash us flat." "They don't know how," Jace's voice was bitter. "We don't kneel easy, they learned that once." Kara tilted her head, studying him. "And yet you kneel to your ghosts." The case hummed louder at that, as though the thing inside enjoyed the accusation. Jace shoved it under his arm and forced himself to breathe steady. They didn't have long. A cruiser's first strike wasn't warning fire, it was punishment. Kara moved deeper into the cave, her hands brushing the walls, tracing the limestone's natural grooves. She stopped at a narrow fissure that slanted upward. Water gushed through it in steady bursts. "This leads to the outer lagoon," she said. "A way out." "Or a way into their teeth," Jace said. Kara's eyes hardened. "Would you rather drown here when the roof falls?" He didn't argue, they dove. The fissure was tight, barely wide enough for Jace's shoulders. Barnacles scraped his arms raw as he pulled himself upward through the channel. The iron case banged against the rock, leaving sparks of pain in his ribs. Water roared in his ears. Kara led the way, her braid flicking in the current like a guiding rope. They emerged in a wide bowl of water open to the sky. The surface boiled with red light. Above them, the cruiser loomed. It was enormous, a spearhead of steel and black crystal, engines glowing pale violet. Its shadow stretched across the lagoon like the wing of some old god. "Blood and bone," Jace whispered. "That's not just a cruiser, that's a Dominion-class carrier." Kara spat seawater. "Names mean little, its teeth are what matter." "They matter," Jace said low, "because I know those teeth." The carrier's lower bay opened. Dull metallic pods dropped into the sky, hissing with white contrails as they descended. One hit the water 100 meters away with a sound like a giant fist slamming the sea. The waves punched them back against the limestone wall. "What are those?" Kara gasped. "Drop pods," Jace said grim. "Troop carriers, they're not going to burn Pelagos from orbit. They want what's in this case." "And they will tear the city apart to find it," Kara whispered. Another pod slammed down, closer this time. Then another. The water around them churned with rising geysers of steam. Jace knew what came next. Lines of armored soldiers, their helmets like insect shells, their rifles hot enough to melt through stone. He had fought them before. He had lost friends to their fire. He had sworn he'd never face them again. But here they were, and here he was. Kara's hand touched his shoulder. Her eyes were calm, but her braid tags rang softly like alarm bells. "Mechanic," she said. "Your tide has found you. Will you swim against it or let it carry you?" Jace wanted to say no. He wanted to hurl the case into the lagoon and let it sink into silence. But he saw Ellie's face again, the leaked photo that had burned itself into his memory years ago. Burned skin, wide, fragile eyes, a child turned into a banner. And the voice of Captain Ead whispering, "Don't pretend you don't remember. You taught me how to break closed doors." He gritted his teeth. "If they want this, they'll choke on it." Kara gave a sharp nod. "Then we stand." The first pod split open on the waves, petals of black metal unfolding. Imperial soldiers waded out, their armor steaming as it met seawater. Their rifles glowed red at the tips. The soldiers scanned the horizon, lenses flashing. Jace ducked back into the limestone shadow. His hands moved fast, digging into the belt he swore he'd never wear again. Tools clinked, probes, coils, a plasma cutter he'd refit into a makeshift torch. He twisted wires together, jammed a power cell into a cracked node, and prayed the old instinct still knew what to do. Kara crouched beside him, pulling a long, curved blade from her braid. The metal tags rang against the hilt as if lending it weight. Her gill lines pulsed with slow fury. The soldiers began moving toward the limestone bowl, their steps hissing against the shallow water. Their leader raised a fist. "By authority of the Galactic Empire," the amplified voice boomed, "relinquish the stolen archive." Jace's fingers tightened on the plasma cutter. "Archive," he muttered, "that's what they call her." Kara's blade caught the red light and gleamed. "We call her child." The soldiers raised their rifles in unison. Jace sparked the cutter. It screamed to life, spitting blue-white fire. He aimed at the fissure above their heads. Limestone cracked and rumbled. The soldiers looked up. Jace smiled grimly. "Doors only stay closed until you learn where to kick." He sliced through the rock. The fissure gave way. A surge of seawater roared down like a fist from the sky, smashing into the soldiers and sweeping them back toward their pod. Their rifles fired wild, bolts of red sizzling into the flood. Kara lunged into the water, blade flashing. She moved like the tide itself, silent, quick, merciless. Her strike opened one soldier's armor at the neck. Blue blood hissed into the lagoon. Jace dove in after her, case strapped to his chest. His cutter sparked underwater, useless now, but his fists remembered. He caught another soldier by the arm and slammed his helmet into the limestone wall until the visor shattered. The soldier went limp. The lagoon churned with chaos, armor clashing, water boiling with fire, Kara's braid tags ringing like war chimes. Jace fought with the grim efficiency of a man who hated himself for knowing how. And above them the carrier shifted. Its engines burned brighter and its shadow deepened. More pods were falling. Kara broke the surface, blade dripping, eyes wide with warning. "Jace, they're not stopping, the whole garrison is coming." Jace dragged himself up, coughing water and blood. He saw the sky split open with fire, pod after pod streaking down. Pelagos would not survive this. He clutched the case. It thrummed in his arms, alive with power. The coordinates inside whispered at him, begging him to move, to leave, to run toward Havenglass. And in that moment, Jace understood. Pelagos was already lost. But Ellie was. "We can't fight them all," he said, his voice cracked. We run now." Kara's jaw tightened. She looked back toward the burning city, her people's memory, her people's not. Then she looked at him, at the case, and at the fire streaking down from the sky. "Then I run with you," she said. The ground shook as another pod slammed into the water, closer than the rest. Its petals opened, and from inside rose something larger than the armored soldiers, twice their height, heavy plating bristling with weapons. Jace's breath froze. He knew that silhouette. An Imperial Reaper frame. And it had seen them. The Reaper rose from the pod, like a nightmare given armor. Its body was plated in black alloy, jointed like an insect but with the weight of a tank. Hydraulic pistons hissed as it unfolded to its full height, red sensors burning where eyes should be. A heavy cannon hung from its right arm, its muzzle glowing with residual heat. The other arm ended in a scythe of metal teeth, a tool for breaching bulkheads and for cutting flesh. Kara whispered something in Lyrian, a prayer or a curse. Her gill lines pulsed pale white. "I thought Reapers were stories." Jay spat water, his stomach twisting. "Every story starts in blood, that's why it survives." The Reaper's sensors swept across the lagoon, scanning heat and motion. Its voice crackled through external speakers, cold and metallic. "Target signature acquired. Civilian resistance irrelevant. Deliver the archive." Jace pressed the iron case against his chest. It vibrated hard, like a caged heart trying to escape. The Reaper was locking onto it, not to him. He turned to Kara. "We can't fight that thing." "You can't," she said, lifting her blade. Her eyes shone with fury. "The sea has teeth, too." Before Jace could stop her, she leapt from the limestone shelf into the boiling lagoon. She swam fast, braids streaming behind her like a banner, knife flashing in her hand. She went straight for the Reaper's legs, aiming to slice the joints. "Damn it, Kara!" Jace roared, scrambling after her. The Reaper tracked her with inhuman speed. Its cannon swung down and spat a bolt of red fire. The water where Kara had been exploded into steam and ash. She dove under, disappearing in the boiling froth. Jace's heart clenched. She's dead. Then her head broke the surface on the Reaper's flank, and her knife drove deep into the creature's knee joint. Sparks screamed into the water. The Reaper staggered sideways, its sensors flaring. Kara shouted, voice raw, "Now JACE." Instinct took him. He dropped the useless plasma cutter and reached for the one thing he still trusted, his hands, his brain, and the cruel beauty of an engine. His eyes scanned the Reaper, cataloging weak points. Cooling vents on the chest, exposed cabling along the scythe arm, intake ports glowing on the back. "Overheat the core," he muttered. "Always the same story." The Reaper raised its scythe arm to crush Kara. Jace moved. He dove into the water, hauling himself up the machine's leg like a rat climbing a mast. His fingers found a handhold in the damaged knee where Kara's blade still jutted. He yanked himself higher, ignoring the heat biting through his soaked clothes. The Reaper shuddered, sensors swiveling. Its cannon aimed down at the lagoon. Kara screamed a warning. Jace found the intake port at the Reaper's back and jammed the iron case against it. The case shrieked, metal scraping metal. The golden filament inside flared bright, flooding the intake with light. The Reaper froze, its sensors flickered. The cannon stuttered mid-charge. The case sang, a low, thrumming note that set the water trembling. Jace's bones ached with it. For a moment he thought he'd killed himself. Then the Reaper staggered, systems collapsing under the overload. Its scythe arm twitched and convulsed. Sparks erupted from its vents. Kara swam back, eyes wide with shock. What did you do? Jace gritted his teeth, holding the case in place. I gave it a taste of the thing it's hunting. The Reaper convulsed again, sensors strobing red-white-red. Then it released a sound that wasn't mechanical at all. It screamed, high and warped, as if something inside it hated being reminded of a child's breath. The machine toppled sideways into the lagoon, water exploding in all directions. Jace barely pulled the case free before he was dragged under. He surfaced gasping, chest on fire, case clutched tight. The Reaper thrashed in the shallows, half its frame melted, sparks jetting into the water. It wasn't dead, it was wounded. And worse, it had screamed loud enough for the whole fleet above to hear. Kara reached him, grabbing his arm. You can't finish it. Jace shook his head, coughing. Not with what I've got, and its friends are coming. Above them, the carrier's belly split open wider. More pods dropped, streaking fire across the sky. Kara pulled him toward a narrow channel in the limestone wall. Then we flee before the sea fills with metal. They swam hard. Behind them, the wounded Reaper dragged itself from the lagoon, sensors blazing. It pointed its cannon after them, struggling to aim through the smoke. Jace and Kara reached the channel just as the cannon fired. The blast tore the rock wall apart, collapsing the tunnel behind them. The wave flung them forward into darkness, tumbling through debris. When they finally surfaced, it was in a hidden cove sheltered by jagged cliffs. The city of Pelagos burned in the distance, flames reflecting off the waves like molten stars. Drones still patrolled the sky. The carrier loomed larger, blotting out half the heavens. Jace coughed seawater and dragged himself onto a shard of stone. He laid the case down beside him, hands shaking. Kara crawled up next to him, face pale but eyes still sharp. Pelagos was dying. He could see it in the flames, hear it in the silence between the screams. He wanted to look away, but the case hummed again, relentless. Kara's voice broke the silence. The Ash Child lives, that's why they came. That's why they burn us. You cannot keep running, Jace, not anymore. He stared at the burning city. The smoke curled upward like 1,000 whispers. The sound of gongs had stopped. That silence was worse than the fire. I swore I was done with war, he said, voice hollow. Kara touched his shoulder. Her braid tags chimed softly. War doesn't care what you swore. The tide doesn't ask, it takes. Above, another section of the city collapsed into flame. Jace closed his eyes. He could still hear the Reapers scream. Not machine, not human, something in between like the echo of a child crying through steel. He knew then that Havenglass wasn't just a location. It was the heart of the Empire's cruelty, and it was waiting for him. His hands tightened on the case. Then we go, we find her. Kara nodded once, but her eyes flicked back to the burning city. If Pelagos falls tonight, our memory dies with it. Jace swallowed hard. Then we'll carry it with us, both of us. And as the flames spread across the horizon, the iron case pulsed brighter, as if agreeing. But far above, on the carrier's command deck, a new voice spoke through the comms, a voice Jace hadn't heard in years. Mechanic Arlen, it said, smooth and cruel. I knew you'd surface again. You always were too stubborn to drown. Jace froze. He knew that voice. Commander Rel, the man who ordered the strike on Amaris III, the man who had turned Ellie into ash. And he was alive. The carrier's voice thundered from the sky, relayed through drone speakers and comm interceptors. It rolled across the burning waves, mocking, familiar. Mechanic Arlen, Commander Rel repeated, smooth and sharp. You thought you could crawl into the cracks of the galaxy and vanish. No, ghosts don't vanish, they rot, and I've smelled you for years. Jay stood frozen on the cliff, salt water dripping from his hair, the iron case heavy in his hands. His chest tightened like an old wound reopening. He had not spoken Rel's name in a decade, but it had never left him. This was the man who had signed the order. Amaris III, tactical sanitation. A phrase written in ink that became fire on a child's skin. Rel, Jace whispered, his teeth ground together. I should have known. Kara's braid clinked softly in the wind, her eyes narrowed. That is him, the butcher of the Ash Child. The butcher of everything, Jace said, voice hollow. Above, the carrier shifted. Floodlights swept the waters, turning the lagoon into a stage. Pods still fell, but now slower, like hammers measuring their strike. Rel's voice oozed confidence. You carry something that belongs to me. Return the archive, and perhaps I will leave Pelagos with scraps still floating. Resist, and I will turn this sea into glass. Jace wanted to scream at the sky. Instead, he laughed, bitter and broken. He always offers mercy like it's a gift, and always takes twice when you accept. Kara touched his arm. Then we do not accept. Jace looked at her, at the city burning behind her, at the case vibrating like a heart that wouldn't die. If we stay, everyone dies. If we run, maybe she lives, but running means leaving your people in the fire. Kara's face twisted with grief. The reflection of her burning city lit her eyes like molten silver. My people know the tide, she said. Sometimes it carries you away from shore, sometimes it drowns you, but always it moves. He wanted to argue, but the case hummed louder, almost impatient. Havenglass was calling. Rel's voice sharpened, mocking. I see you, Arlen, don't bother hiding. My reaper tasted you. I will cut the rest myself. I owe it to the girl. The words hit Jace like a blade. He clenched the case so hard his knuckles whitened. He knows, he remembers Ellie. Kara's jaw tightened, then he bleeds for her. But Jace shook his head. Not yet, not here, not with a fleet in the sky. From the cliffs he spotted an old dock hidden in shadow. A skimmer rested there, half sunk, waves lapping against its cracked hull. He knew the design, an old courier, fast enough to outrun dropships if its engines still breathed. That's our way out, Jace said, if it still runs. Kara gave him a grim smile. You fix engines, I break soldiers, we both do what we know. They sprinted along the jagged rocks. Above them, drones swooped, scanning the cliffs. One spotted them and Dove, its red beam sweeping across the stone. Jace shoved Kara down as a burst of plasma tore the air above their heads. Kara rolled, hurled her curved blade like a spear. It struck the drone's vane, sending it spiraling into the rocks in a shower of sparks. She retrieved the blade in one smooth motion, braid tags ringing. Keep running. The dock loomed closer. The courier skimmer rocked, paint peeling, hull scarred with barnacles. Jace leapt aboard and tore open the maintenance hatch. The smell of salt and rust hit him like a punch. Wires hung loose. The power cell was corroded, coolant lines cracked. Tell me you can make it breathe, Kara said, slashing at another drone circling above. Jace's hands flew over the guts of the engine. It'll breathe, but it'll scream while it does. He ripped the power cell out, slammed the case down beside the engine, and yanked a filament from its glowing spool. The case resisted, humming angrily, but the filament slid free, shining gold. He jammed it into the cell coupler. The engine shuddered, coughed, then roared to life with a sound like thunder underwater. Kara stared. You used the archive to fuel it. Jace grinned grimly. It doesn't want to hide, it wants to burn. Drones swarmed overhead. One fired, blasting a chunk of dock into splinters. Jace yanked Kara onto the skimmer, slammed the hatch, and threw the throttle. The courier jolted forward, half sinking, then rose onto its foils. Water exploded behind it as the engine howled. The skimmer tore across the lagoon. Flames and smoke blurred past on either side. The drones shrieked after them, red beams lashing the waves. Kara stood at the stern, blade flashing, cutting down drones that flew too low. Her braid clinked like a war drum. Jace held the controls tight, eyes locked on the horizon. The case glowed in the engine core, filaments weaving gold through the ship's systems. It was more than power, it was direction. It was leading them. Behind, the Reaper dragged itself from the lagoon, half melted but still alive. Its sensors locked on them, cannon whining. Then Rel's voice returned, colder than before. Run, Arlen, run as far as you like. The tide always returns, and when it does, I will be waiting with her name on my tongue. The Reaper fired. The beam split the waves just behind the skimmer, boiling the sea into steam. The shockwave nearly capsized them. Kara grabbed Jace's arm, steadying him. Jace clenched his jaw, throttle wide open. Not today, Rel. You don't get to say her name. The skimmer roared into the open ocean, fleeing into the storm winds. Above them, the carrier began to move, its massive engines igniting, preparing to follow. The skimmer screamed across the ocean, foils knifing through storm waves as lightning tore the sky into silver shreds. Behind them, Pelagos burned, its pylons collapsing into fire and foam. The carrier shadowed the horizon, engines glowing like a second sun. Inside the skimmer's cabin, Jace wrestled the controls. Sparks spat from the panel where he'd jammed the golden filament. The iron case pulsed faintly on the floor, feeding the engine like a heart pumping blood into failing veins. Kara braced herself against the hull, her braid dripping seawater, eyes fixed on the storm. The tide will not hold them, she said. They will chase us past the sky. They always do, Jace muttered. Rel doesn't let prey die quick. Her head turned sharply. You know him, not only his name. Jace's jaw tightened. He kept his eyes on the storm horizon. He commanded Europa front when I served, smiled when he gave kill orders, smiled when he signed Amaris 3. Kara's voice hardened. The Ash Child. He nodded once. Ellie. The name left his mouth like glass. Silence filled the cabin, broken only by the howl of the storm. Kara finally said, softer, Then this is not only your war, it is hers. The skimmer jolted violently. Jace swore, slammed the throttle, and drove them into the heart of the storm. Rain hammered the hull. Lightning carved wild paths through black clouds. The carrier's lights vanished in the fury behind them. Kara leaned close, shouting over the storm. Where does this tide carry us, mechanic? Jace's eyes dropped to the case. It glowed faint gold, threads of light writhing across its surface, shifting like a compass searching for north. The coordinates Iad had given him in the projection burned in his memory. Havenglass. Havenglass, he said. Old ring habitat. Empire buried it at the edge of the dorsal arm. That's where she is. Kara frowned. And what do you expect to find, a child or a weapon? Jace's voice cracked. Both. The storm broke suddenly, spitting them into clear sky. Above, stars glittered cold and endless. The skimmer's battered hull groaned as it climbed higher, buoyed by the case's unnatural power. Clouds fell away. Gravity loosened its grip. Kara's eyes widened as the black of space unfolded. You turned a fisher's skimmer into a ship of stars. Jace forced a grim smile. First lesson they teach us, everything breaks. Second lesson, you can make anything fly if you're desperate enough. The stars sharpened and the storm world shrank beneath them, but the relief was brief. The carrier broke through the cloud ceiling like a mountain ripping free of Earth. Its engines flared, its hangar bays alive with swarms of drones and dropships. Kara's breath caught. The Predator follows. Rel's voice crackled across their comms, distorted but sharp as a knife. You cannot outfly me, Arlen. Give me the archive, and I will let the Lyrians keep their bones unburned. Resist, and I will salt their seas with ash. Jace slammed the comms off. His hands trembled on the controls. Kara saw it. She gripped his wrist until his knuckles cracked. Do not let him use her name against you, she said, fierce. Children are not flags for tyrants, not his, not yours. Her words cut through him. For years he had carried Ellie like a wound, letting her death define him. Rel used it as a blade, but Kara was right. Ellie wasn't a flag. She was a girl who hummed to birds and asked why humans punched each other for sport. Jace drew a long breath, his hands steadied. Then we finish this, Havenglass. The skimmer's nose turned toward the stars. The filament inside the engine flared brighter, weaving light through every circuit. Coordinates streamed across the cracked display, guiding them toward a pinprick of light on the galactic rim. But Rel wasn't letting go. The carrier surged after them, its bulk blotting out starlight. Drones spilled into the void, engines wailing like locusts. Kara strapped herself into the gunner's seat, little more than a manual turret bolted to the skimmer's hull. She ran her hands along the controls, unfamiliar but determined. Show me where to aim. Jace barked a dry laugh. At everything that moves. The drones closed in, red beams stabbing across the void. Kara's turret roared, spitting hot plasma. One drone burst into shrapnel. Another veered smoking into the sea below. Her braid tags chimed with every recoil. Jace weaved the skimmer through the swarm, muscles taut, eyes locked on the path ahead. The case pulsed in rhythm with the engine, a golden heartbeat dragging them toward Havenglass. But then the carrier's forward cannons flared. A beam of pure white ripped through the void, missing the skimmer by meters. The shockwave tossed them sideways, alarms screaming. Kara shouted, "They will cut us apart." Jace's eyes burned with fury. Not if we cut first. He yanked a lever, rerouting the filament's flow from the engine to the rear thrusters. The skimmer bucked, then launched forward like a spear. Stars smeared into lines. The drones fell behind, struggling to match the sudden burst. The carrier roared after them, but even it couldn't match the impossible surge the archive gave. Jace grinned through clenched teeth. That's right, Rel, chase me into the dark. Kara steadied herself against the hull, hair whipping in zero gravity. She gave him a fierce, sharp smile. You lead him to Havenglass, you lead him to the child, then we make the tide turn. The skimmer streaked into the abyss, guided by the archive's light. Behind them, the Empire's hunter followed, its shadow vast and hungry. Jace glanced once at the case, its glow painting his scarred hands gold. For the first time in years, he did not just feel grief, he felt something sharper. Purpose. But as the stars bent around them, a thought whispered at the edge of his mind. What if Ellie wasn't waiting to be saved? What if she was waiting to be unleashed? Havenglass appeared out of the void like a ghost ring. The skimmer dropped from the archive's impossible surge into the cold silence of the galactic rim. Jace's stomach lurched at the sudden stillness. Stars sharpened. Engines cooled. Ahead of them, a broken halo of steel hung around a dead world, its arcs bent and scarred by centuries of neglect. The ring habitat rotated slowly, fragments missing, vast shadows bleeding across its surface. Kara whispered, awe and dread twined together. Havenglass, a grave turned into a crown. Jace's throat was dry, where they hid her. The archive case pulsed with golden light, brighter now, almost eager. It vibrated against the deck, tugging toward the ring like a compass finding true north. Behind them, the carrier tore from hyperspace, its engines blazing violet, drones already spilling out. Rel's voice hissed across the comms, oily and confident. You led me straight to her, Arlen, loyal even in rebellion. I knew you wouldn't resist the bait, you never could. Jace killed the comm, hands tight on the controls. Kara saw his jaw clench, the way his scars drew taut around his mouth. Do not let his voice own you, she said firmly. He is not the tide, he is only a stone. Stones sink. The skimmer dove toward Havenglass, weaving through debris fields of shattered panels and drifting towers. Drones followed, red eyes glowing, weapons hot. Kara fired the turret, shredding two, sending another into a spiral of sparks. Then the archive itself acted. The case glowed so bright it seared Jace's eyes. A pulse of golden light rippled outward, washing across the debris. Doors sealed for centuries creaked open. Old conduits flared to life. A docking bay yawed wide, lights flickering like awakening eyes. It wants us inside, Jace breathed. The skimmer slammed onto the dock, sparks flying. Jace grabbed the case, pulled Kara from the turret, and sprinted down the ramp into the forgotten ring. Inside, Havenglass breathed stale air and silence. Its walls were blackened with soot, its floors cracked. But the deeper they ran, the more the archive glowed, guiding them down long corridors into the ring's heart. Kara's voice was tight with awe. This place remembers her. They reached a chamber lined with glass tubes, each filled with faded ash. Old experiments. Failures. Jace's stomach twisted. He remembered rumors, the Empire's obsession with biological keys, lives turned into passwords. At the far end of the chamber, a single pod glowed faintly blue. Inside lay a child. Her chest rose and fell. Ellie. Not a picture, not an echo, not a ghost. A living girl. Her hair was singed, her face scarred, but her body breathed. Tubes fed into her veins, monitors flickered around her. Every breath she took made the archive in Jace's hands pulse brighter, as though her lungs fueled the stars. Kara whispered, she is the tide itself. Jace staggered closer, chest aching. Ellie, his voice broke. He pressed a hand against the glass, she didn't stir. Behind them, the doors blew open. Commander Rel strode in, flanked by armored soldiers. His face was older lined, but his smile was the same. Cold, crooked, cruel. Well done, Arlen, he said. You brought me home to my weapon. She's not a weapon, Jace snarled. Rel's smile widened. Oh, but she is. Every defense array, every orbital grid, every dormant fleet, her breath keeps them alive, and with her in my hands I become the Empire. Kara stepped forward, blade drawn. Children are not crowns for butchers. Rel's soldiers raised rifles. The room glowed red with targeting lasers. Jace held up the case. You want her, you want this, then take it. He twisted the latch. The case screamed open, golden filament flaring like fire. The lights in the chamber flickered. The pod's monitors surged. Ellie's breath quickened. The archive's voice filled the room. Not human, not machine, something between. A whisper of every protest, every scream, every memory of Amaris III. We remember. The soldiers faltered, clutching their helmets. Kara staggered but held her ground. Rel sneered, forcing a step forward. Cheap tricks, she is mine. Jace's eyes burned. He pressed the case against the glass of Ellie's pod. The filament spread across it like veins of light. The glass dissolved. Tubes snapped free. Ellie gasped and opened her eyes. They were not the eyes of a 6-year-old. They were something older, something vast. Her voice was a whisper, but it shook the chamber. You made me burn, you made me remember, now I burn you. The archive exploded outward. Golden fire rushed through the walls, into the conduits, into the ring's core. Lights across Havenglass flared alive. Outside, dormant weapons platforms powered up, targeting systems locking onto the carrier. Rel's soldiers screamed as their armor fused. Kara dragged Jace back as the floor split with light. Rel stood defiant, eyes wide with greed. You think this destroys me, this crowns me. Ellie's gaze fixed on him. Her scarred face was calm. No, this ends you. The ring's weapons fired. Outside, beams of golden energy lanced across the void. The carrier cracked apart, its belly torn open, drones vaporized in their swarms. The explosion painted the stars with fire. Rel screamed, consumed in light. His body vanished, his voice silenced. Silence followed, deep and absolute. Jace fell to his knees beside Ellie's pod. She stared at him, eyes strange and endless. For a heartbeat, he saw the girl he remembered, the one who asked about boxing matches, who hummed songs to birds. Then he saw the weight of something else, something the Empire had forced into her bones. Ellie, he whispered, tears cutting lines in the ash on his face. She reached a trembling hand toward him. He took it, warm and real. Kara touched his shoulder, her voice was low. The tide turned tonight, but where it carries us now, even the sea cannot say. Jace looked at the stars burning with the Empire's fall. He felt Ellie's small hand gripping his. He knew the war wasn't over, not truly. But the galaxy would never forget her name. We remember,